Hey everyone, welcome back to Asturis in City Skylines. We were working on the beaches in the last two episodes, extending the city along the coastline and finally reaching one of the big mountain ridges. This is very important because I really look forward to the projects around and on it. One of those projects must be a very important public transport junction that presents itself where a bunch of train tracks go over the new main avenue and where tram lines aim. This is exactly the place where we will build today. We will do an unnecessarily complicated and vertical train station with a multi-level plaza below it with tram stops and lots of colors and landscaping. Let's go. So it probably wasn't all that clear where we are going to be building from those previous shots, but right here I'm just going to show it because this is the main corridor, the railway corridor that exits the downtown from the main transportation hub and aims into this undeveloped part of the city, unbuilt part of the city. So these are the railways that I prepared all the way in episode 2 after building the space elevator, and I had really big plans with those right from the start. As you can see, and as you could have seen back in that episode, I built quite a lot of these railways on different levels, right? So a few of them go over the second river that we haven't seen yet that much, and that's going to go into some future industrial area by the end of the bay. And so those are cargo railways and passenger railways as well. Now the cargo railway, that's the one that cuts through the center of the main transportation hub. And in this case, in this corridor, this is the one that goes like sunken between those two uppermost tracks, right? So this is the one that you can see right there. Now, eventually, these single tracks, they are going to go above the cargo tracks and merge, and then continue on the side of those cargo tracks. It's all really done just to make things a bit more, spicier, just more interesting and unnecessarily complicated, which is kind of what I like doing. Now, in this place, so we are going to create the train station, and I was not exactly sure at first if I'm just going to build platforms for all the passenger tracks. Eventually, I decided, yes, I will, and this is what we are going to get. So there are two tracks that are running parallel, or two lines, let's say, that are carrying passengers. But after this train station, they are going to go into different directions. One of those, the lowermost track, the one on the right in here, is the one that continues along the coastline and eventually along the riverbank into some future area of the city, like a more disconnected area of the city that we are probably going to see well into the future, right? It's going to take some time before we reach that place. And those other passenger tracks, those are the ones that I talked about. Those continue across the river. Eventually, we are going to build some nice-looking custom bridge there into some future industrial zone. So it was not super necessary to build platforms for both of them in here, but it's just going to make it more complicated if I do, so I did. And this is what we end up with. Now, there are also tram tracks right on the top, together with the topmost tracks. There is this tram line. Now, these tracks are not going to be connected by today or at the end of today's project to anything, but it is going to be the continuation of one of those lines that continue underneath the main transportation hub, the one that I never really completed past the transportation hub from that second or third episode where I did that tram station. But it's eventually going to be a line that will continue. That's why I'm already building it this tall. That's eventually going to continue on the ridge. Well, not really on top of the ridge, but it's kind of going to twist on the contour lines, maybe like halfway towards the top of the ridge, right? There are going to be some kind of like sloped areas, residential areas. Really looking forward to building those. There's going to be lots of nature and all these kinds of like natural details. I'm not really sure if I'm going to do it in the next episode or start that area in the next episode. I think I will, because I really want to finally see how that might look on those slopes kind of overlooking the city. So that's going to be a tram line that's going to serve that area. Again, it's not like super necessary. I could have just, left it without public transport or put buses in there or something like that, but this is just going to make it really, really interesting. I haven't done anything like that before, so why not? And it's just an excuse to just put trams on different levels in this particular place. So that on its own is just a good reason. Now, so that's the topmost tram line. That's not going to be connected. These two tram lines, though, these two tracks, these are connected, and they already serve passengers, as you can see. Now, one of those lines, the one on the left, the track that has the trams right now, the vehicles, that's the one that we started last time. That's the one with the reversible station at the beach, right? So right now it only has these two stations, at the beach and in here. So it's not exactly super busy, but it will get, reasonably busy. Although it's going to be a line that will later continue along the edges of the city into some more outlying areas. So it's going to serve more the purpose of like a light rail or something like that. The other line, the one on the right there, on that green surface there that I started building, that's the one that continues from the downtown, and it's actually the same line that goes like parallel to the edges of the downtown, and eventually it's going to form a ring around the entire like inner part of the city. So it's a tram line that we started building way back in that like a main plaza area, that circular sunken area. That's exactly the line. Then it continues towards the bay, the little bay that we did a couple of episodes back, and eventually it's going to reach this place. Now, the place between the bay and this area is not done yet, but you could have seen me just finish those tracks already, because I really wanted to already connect it with vehicles, and that is a line that's very busy with passengers already at this point. So, when all the residential and commercial and all the other places around this hub are going to be done, these open surfaces are going to be super crowded with pedestrians, because this hub is, well, it's a hub, right? So it's super important, and people are just going to be using it in very large numbers. All right, so that was the basic explanation, what all these lines are, where they go, and what their purpose is. Now, let's talk more about the structure of this entire monstrosity. So I had absolutely no idea at first how I'm going to approach this. Am I going to put just some fake, procedural objects like buildings below all these tracks? Not really, because I started with that. As you can see, that's those like building line on the side there. That's going to be more important later. But right now I wanted to maybe experiment with some more like brutalist maybe as well, looking concrete supports below these train tracks in here, this train station I should call it already. And I'm just using this pillar, this one pillar type, and copying it multiple times, making sure that it goes, up and down as it needs to below these tracks, and also so that it doesn't obstruct anything that's on the surface. So we need to make way for that main avenue. As you can see, I kind of made those pillars in here slightly different compared to the rest of the area, and then we need to make sure that all of these pillars are going to support not only the first network that they see above them, but also the networks that are kind of obstructed from having like a direct support. So that's, for example, the case of those upper platforms right there. So this is like a perfect opportunity to create some kind of, weird looking structures and really play a lot with the design of this entire area. So in there I created, again, these kinds of like rib structures so that they are supporting the upper networks, kind of going around the networks in the lower parts of the station. And overall, it's just looking really good. Later, it's going to be a bit more decorated. It's going to have some elements that will just blend in with the rest of the area a bit better. But overall, it's already looking okay. And obviously just making sure that even inside of the train station there are some supports that just make sense structurally, and overall it's not like completely like impossible to have a structure like that standing with these supports like it. So, this place is all about networks, by the way. So, not only the tracks at the platforms, but also all these kinds of retaining walls and borders, heavily using the border network from the Ronixis, I believe, pack of decorative networks for the railway pack, and also these soundproof barriers for highways, these Japanese highway sound barriers, because they have the perfect height. It was really difficult to pick a network that's not tall enough. Usually these like retaining walls and all these networks are very tall, but this soundproof barrier, yeah, that's the word, they are fine. They're absolutely the correct height. So I'm using it on the side of that cargo railway, so that it creates this like a wall between those, also the cargo railway and the upper passenger tracks. And it creates this like a shape that makes it look like a beam, like a continuous, like a cross section, like a U-shape beam, right? So that on its own is like a structural element that is supposed to look like it's part of the entire load-bearing structure of this thing. So, that's great. And we are going to continue with that even further along the side of the ridge. Now, the rest of this entire embankment, let's call it, is going to be filled with just a wall. In here, in this place, I'm going to do it with pillars. On the other side of the avenue, I'm not going to do that today, but later I'm probably going to continue some maybe like semi-open spaces. So that's why I'm already preparing these pillars on the other side of the main avenue, but only just to have like a better idea what to do next. But we are not going to do that today. But yeah, from this place into the main hub in the center of the city, it's just going to be a solid wall, and maybe with some like cutouts for like roads going below it or something like that. We already indicated that at the main hub, but I really don't want to do anything more than that. So it's going to look much better. Like these places with the pillars are going to be a bit highlighted because of that. But anyway, that's like a project for the future. So now, these places, the plaza below the train station, what it is and what's the plan for it. So it's multi-level, of course. So we have those trams arriving at a certain elevated height above the main avenue, and I really do want to have those tram lines end at some kind of a plaza level. So it just, makes sense that we do the plaza also multi-leveled. So we have that we introduce back the green surfaces. That's going to be the topmost level of the plaza. And then there are stairs, huge stairs that are going to go from the surface bottom level all the way up to the green level. Now, unfortunately, or maybe actually fortunately, these places, these two levels are very far apart. So we have to create the stairs so that there's at least like a single, like a resting area, right? If we just did those stairs, continuous all the way to those top levels, then it would just be way too long, way too big. And this only, creates more opportunities for just something, spicier again. So I decided that on the side of that plaza, there is going to be that hotel building. I believe that's like a Korean hotel building. I'm not exactly sure. I've used it in Aurelia as well. It's like a very nice looking, unique building. And it has that very specific shape that really fits this place. So it's going to be defining one edge of that plaza. And at the end of the building, there are going to be the stairs, kind of matching the shape or matching the end of the building. So it's kind of very naturally all blending together. And later we are, of course, going to detail that plaza with some nicer surfaces. Now, this project is absolutely huge. I'm skipping through most of these parts, but I didn't want to build just the train station and the plaza, so it needed to have some buildings around it. Obviously, the hotel building, like I mentioned, but also on this side, we needed to pick something. The shapes in here defined by the networks are a bit awkward, so in here, I decided that I'm just going to fill these places with some smaller buildings, and in some cases just turned into procedural objects and made a bit more customized. And since I'm really not trying to overshadow whatever future project is going to be on the slopes of that ridge, I really don't want to use tall buildings. So this train station is kind of going to be the tallest thing around. Maybe the hotel building is a tiny bit taller by a couple of floors, but all the rest of the structures around, I really want to have them short. So that's exactly the case of those like brick buildings there that you could have seen in the background. And their sole purpose is to really just define like the opposite edge of this area. There's literally nothing else that they do. I mean, they fill that area and they are, not really that terrible, but yeah, the main purpose of those buildings is to just provide like a corner of this place. And they do it very, very, very well, because it's like a pack of different buildings, so we can fill like a larger area with it. As you can see, I also put grass on the roofs of those buildings, but overall that block is probably not going to be finished after today, because I already at this point realized that I really took a very, very big bite with this one. So I'm just going to try to put some buildings around this area, but not really finish the inner yards or something like that, because yeah, this project is just absolutely huge. Now, this is what I was talking about, or was I talking about it? Anyway, I did some landscaping, because this place is not going to be vertical just, because of those networks and because of the train station, but it's also going to serve as a connection between different terrain levels. So we have that main avenue. There are the stairs, it goes to this green level. And then there is that wall of procedural object buildings. And on top of the buildings, that's basically where the first, like a surface level of the ridge where it starts, okay? So that's why I put the procedural object surfaces there, the grass, on top of those buildings. And it really blends very well with that surface of the ridge. And it makes it look like those procedural object buildings are just like retaining walls on the side of this entire area. And in a way, it makes it look like as if this place was just cut into the ridge, into the side, into the base of the ridge, and made slightly sunken above that or below that level. So, overall, it's just a connector between different levels, not just like, for the plaza and the networks, but also terrain. I already said that. But yeah, it's going to serve as basically like a gateway towards that ridge area. Now that I think of it, and now that I'm explaining it, I'm probably going to rework that procedural object wall of buildings, and I'm probably going to introduce some, maybe again, like bigger stairs or something like that, so that it looks a bit more monumental, that this place is just going to be the entrance to that, residential probably area on the slopes of that ridge. So really looking forward to starting that. And it's just going to continue all around the ridge, and it's probably going to end on the other side with that customized bridge where these railways are crossing the river. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I already said that a million times, but I really, really am. This is also like a project, like an attempt to just blend the sides of the railways towards that ridge. Obviously, right now is just some ploppable surfaces, but later it's going to be a bit more detailed. Like I said, but this project is absolutely huge. So some of these things that I'm doing in here are not going to be finished by today, but later I'm just going to return to that. This is something that I probably should not have done with this project. Again, I just took a very, very large bite today. But this is just some kind of attempt to create some sort of structures below the railways and make it look like it's like halfway finished or something. So since these railways are on the side of the ridge, on one side they are supported by the rocks, by the cliffs and all that, and on the other side they needed to be made into some sort of like retaining walls or these kinds of pillars, supports and all that. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. At first, on the bottom you can see it, there is that wall that I later replace with these, I'm not really sure what they're called, like profile networks or terrain profile networks, something like that. And they are forming these like cut cliffs, right? Now, unfortunately, because I'm using the Rotterdam mod, which gets rid of those like network shadows when you are using like surface networks, like a very special case, right? When you're using a surface network and there is like a terrain below it made lower, then it has those shadows on the sidewalks and all that. So that mod gets rid of that. Unfortunately, it also gets rid of, for example, cliffs appearing on those slope networks, right? So one way I got rid of that or got around that is by simply using decal cliffs on those networks, because decals are appearing on networks, so that's very convenient. And it's looking good. It's looking very consistent. It looks like those cliffs are actually like artificially cut. And because this is just like a solid rock, it doesn't really need to be covered by some retaining wall or anything like that. So I'm just using those pillars in like exact same spacings between them, using Move It, of course. And it's looking kind of natural and interesting. It's just not like a solid wall of some concrete or something that I'm doing all the time, but actually, incorporating some nature into it. Although still, it's a tiny bit too plain, just because it's very, very long. So, maybe I'm going to touch it later, but for now, as a side thing on this place, on the side of this project, it's looking okay. Now back to this plaza. So it was super important to break this surface somehow, colors, planters, whatever. And I decided I'm just going to use these tiles in here. At first, I really was tempted to just go for those, good old Sydney decals, just like I'm using in the Bay Area, because they're just looking very good and they are accepting different colors very well. But I thought I'm just going to use something different, so I used these and then I recolored them. And this was like a first attempt, but I actually kept it. I just used these different colors like super randomly, and I really like them. For some reason, this like a color scheme with that like beige base and those like purple, cyan, red, and like mustard color or something, it just reminds me of like Olympic colors, even though they're not. But I'm not really sure why they remind me of it, but they do. Now, anyway, because this project is just so huge, I'm skipping through most of the things in the time-lapse. I just showed you a couple of pictures how I was making the custom pedestrian connections in that area. And it was really, really complicated to connect absolutely everything. And I also realized that because we are connecting, or we are trying to create stations for the trains, we must finally revisit the main transportation hub and finish those train stations there. Otherwise, people have no way to go from here, and the stations would just be empty. We wouldn't even see any pedestrians use this place. So I had to go there. I was doing that on the live stream. It took me a couple of hours. It was really, really complicated, but kind of frustrating as well a bit. But I managed, and we finally have the main transportation hub done with all the pedestrian connections, so that we can just do all kinds of train stations all around the city for all the lines that we have, and people are going to be using it. So that's very nice. That's like a very important achievement. And people are already using those things, even though there's pretty much nothing around this area. I think I turned that hotel building into like a Rico residential, so that's pretty much the only destination that people go to. Now, doing some kind of a shelter on the station building, because it should probably have some kind of a shelter. I didn't really want to do it, to be completely honest, but then I decided that I'm just going to try experimenting with these shelter networks, and it just so happened that one of those shelter networks have also this like a beige color that is very similar to the base color of the tiles on that plaza. So I decided to use it, and that's like the standard procedure already at this point in this series, that I'm just going to just do something with these shelters with the node controller. And on the top, I made it wider so that it covers both of the platforms and also the center cargo track, because why not? These roofs come with pillars that are absolutely perfect for this. They have like H-shaped pillars or something. So they have two legs, and I can just make them on the side of that cargo like retaining wall or something. So I'm not obstructing the platforms, right, with any kind of pillars. That's kind of important. And that lower platform, the one on the rightmost side of the station, I just decided I'm going to cover that with like a tilted smaller version of that same roof, because we already have those concrete ribs in there, and it just creates like a very nice supporting network for some sort of a shelter like that. So that turned out looking great. I was a bit worried at first that since I'm going to cover the platforms, I'm not really going to be seeing the people and all the movement and all the action, but it was okay. Eventually, it's like a nice detail. Lights, of course, that's very important in this place, and not just the place, but also the existing railways. Now, these days, we have the intersection marking tools and its ability to put props on these networks, even lights. So this is, super easy. I was really worried back when I was doing the first custom bridge. I was also doing these yellow lights on the railways. How am I going to space them evenly in curves? And now I don't need to deal with that, because I'm just going to use intersection marking tools for that purpose. And it was super easy to do that. So at this point, I think I already released that Altengrad episode where I talked about intersection marking tools and those cobblestone inserts, how they are insanely easy to do these days. And lights are also super easy to do these days, like super custom lights in all kinds of weird positions on the networks, different spacings, curves, straights, doesn't matter. It's all so easy to do it. So that's really great. Anyway, extra portion of cinematics today, because it's, kind of logical that this place is, requiring some different angles to fully appreciate it. But anyway, those were the transition shots. As you could have seen, there are lots of empty areas around the area, but that's kind of the case with all these like important public transport hubs. You kind of start with them and then you just slowly expand all the places around them. But it's very important that those are built first, right? Because, well, they are the hubs. That's kind of the definition of these places. They are very, very important. So that tram track that is just a dead end. It just aims towards the ridge. That's going to be very important network. That is going to be probably the topic of the next episode, I suppose. I already decided. And we are just going to start populating that ridge, all the hill places. And this particular view, like a low angle view up that ridge, is going to be looking very much different at the end of the next episode, because I already indicated it with that little jungle on top of that procedural object line of buildings. But this is probably something that's going to continue up the ridge together with some medium to low density structures, and it's all hopefully going to form some some interesting places. I don't want to just populate it with like random selection of buildings, but I really want to pay attention to that. So these are some close shots, close angles really of this finished plaza. I'm really satisfied with the colors of this one. I was not exactly all that keen on doing some beige looking, concrete looking areas at the start of this series, but in this particular place it really works. Although I suppose it only works because it's combined with some different colors here and there, right? So for example, these stripes down here and the fan favorite green on this surface. Now, by the way, this green is going to be connected to the rest of the city, so you can see that on the edges it's not even finished at the end of this project, because it is just going to continue into different places. It's definitely going to continue along this particular tram track that we have right here. I'm going to rework those retaining walls there above those shops, and it's going to continue to the main transportation hub, to the Olympic Stadium, and all the rest of the places around the city. It's probably not going to continue all the way up to the ridge, though. Maybe I'm going to use the boardwalks in there, just like I did with the beach. And I already kind of indicated that, because there is that boardwalk path coming from the beach that is most probably going to go up that ridge. So, multiple points of entry to that area of the city. I also did some night lights in here, some kind of, commercials, ads and whatnot, because that hotel building's wall is very large. It kind of screams for some details like that, even though I didn't really go that ham on the night lights. Anyway, that is going to be all from today's project. Thank you for watching it. Hope you liked it. If you did, then please don't forget to do all the usual things. That is putting thumbs up below the video, sharing it if you think others might like it, subscribing to the channel if you are new here, leaving a comment. And if you really like this, you can directly support this channel by becoming a channel member. A huge thanks to all the people who already did. I really appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more episodes. Take care and goodbye.